Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm Sam Albanese from the National Weather Service. Today's weather around the state, we did see some pretty heavy showers this morning over the south central region, particularly between Palmer and Wasilla and the Anchorage area. Very convective environment. We already started to see some thunderstorms sprouting up around the state, and we'll be discussing that a little bit later as I talk about the surface map. But let's get started by taking a look at our satellite. Well, first our fire danger. And the fire danger, pretty much as wet and cool as it's been the last week or so, 2 weeks almost, the fire danger around the state has really set back a bit. And the only true area of concern as far as burnable fuels go, wildland areas, is up in the northwest part of the state. The remainder of the state is the fire danger because of fuels is basically moderate or less. Okay. Now we'll take a look at our satellite imagery, and this is the visible satellite imagery. And what you can notice, and that loop went kind of fast. We had some issues with our satellite loops, the images today. But as you can see, there's a lot of cloud cover over the state, particularly over the interior, this popcorn type looking cloud cover. That's the convection that I was talking about. There's some thunderstorms that are actually all the way down towards Iliamna, out towards Bethel, but the majority of them are up into the Tanana Valley, north of the Alaska Range, and even a little bit into the Copper River Basin. But you can see, generally speaking, a lot of cloud cover throughout the state, keeping conditions cool and moist. And then even down in southeast Alaska with this flow pattern, there was somewhat of a warm front going through there. Taking a look at the infrared version of this, kind of really shows up nicely. You can see the convection popping up across the interior here. This was the moisture that did come through south central Alaska earlier today. Well, trailing back, there was a trough that was across this area. Lots of moisture over the south central region was responsible for a lot of the shower activity. And then out further to the west in the Aleutian Islands, there's a system south of the Aleutian Islands, but the big situation out there is a high pressure system over that eastern Bering Sea and the low clouds, stratus and foggy type conditions. Here's that flow into southeast Alaska. And on the surface map, you can see with that flow pattern, a bit of a warm front, rainy, somewhat dreary type conditions in the southern half of the panhandle, predominantly in the southern panhandle, some fog with drizzle, rain, and cool conditions there. Further to the north, it was generally just cloudy, but we are anticipating that moisture and precipitation should spread further to the north overnight. And along the north Gulf Coast, generally cloudy conditions as well. In the south central region, this trough that was hanging down from that low pressure system over the Yukon Territory, that's where the showers were really focused early in the morning and continued with some shower activity throughout much of the day. And of course, we started to see the convection forming into thunderstorm type activity down towards Iliamna, Bethel area, the Kuskokwim Valley, right on up into the upper Yukon Valley, even into portions of the Tanana Valley. And then of course, across much of the Yukon Territory closer to that low pressure system. High pressure in the eastern Bering Sea, Pribilof Islands and St. Paul, drizzly, foggy conditions there, cloudy conditions. Even though it's high pressure, the Bering Sea this time of year with high pressure, usually it equates to cloudy conditions. Alaska Peninsula is somewhat cloudy, some isolated showers on the south side of the peninsula, and then out into the Aleutian Islands. This low that was just south of the Aleutian Islands in that front were generally cloudy conditions with some rain on the south side of the Aleutian Islands. Taking a look at the forecast for tonight, our low pressure system that was off southeast Alaska it's not moving on up into the Yukon Territory. It's basically dying down here off the Dixon entrance area. And a trough is going to extend to low pressure that's forming, or the low pressure that's not that it's forming, but the low pressure that's in the Yukon Territory dragging a little bit to the south. Along this trough, showery type conditions throughout southeast Alaska. Doesn't look like the Yakutat area will see any showers. There is a slight chance. In the south central region and the southern interior region of the state and eastern interior, here you can see scattered thunderstorm activity is really what we're expecting. Down on the Kenai Peninsula, pretty much isolated. Same thing over towards Iliamna. Scattered type thunderstorm activity is likely to be occurring Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, Tanana Valley, and that upper Yukon Valley, as well as some scattered showers in the evening. Once these things die out late in the evening, expect the clouds to kind of flatten out with them and remaining generally cloudy across those areas. Clear conditions from the eastern Arctic coast right on down through the northwest interior to the Norton Sound region. Cloudy conditions over the western Arctic coast to the Barrow area. And there's even a chance, especially by the morning hours, that you're may see some rain over that northwest Arctic coast and towards Barrow. With our high pressure in the eastern Bering Sea, we're going to continue to see the low clouds and fog over the Pribilof Islands, likely going to be moving on up into the St. Lawrence Island area. Also, the Alaska Peninsula will stay cloudy. You might even see some fog along the Alaska Peninsula in the morning hours. Same thing for the Dutch Harbor area. And then out over the Aleutian chain itself, with the low pressure system staying to the south, the main impact for this system is going to be an increase in winds. The precipitation is likely only going to be over the west central to western Aleutian Islands with this low pressure system. Taking a look at the forecast now for Friday. Trough of low pressure is kind of hanging across the panhandle. Some scattered to isolated shower activity is possible with that, but generally remaining cloudy. Over the south central region, we're still going to see this trough extending down back across the Copper River Basin to the Cook Inlet region. Actually, it's looking like early Friday, cloudy conditions are going to persist. The clouds are going to start to break up, becoming more sunny by the evening hours. Same thing for the Copper River Basin, but with the daytime heating, also we're going to see an increase in instability convection-wise. Some isolated thunderstorm activity is likely in the Copper River Basin, possible in the Susitna Valley, generally along the Alaska Range, as well as the eastern Tanana Valley and up into the eastern northeast part of the upper Yukon Valley. Otherwise, sunny conditions over the central interior as well as the south slopes of the Brooks Range. Along the Arctic coast, with this weak low pressure area in the picture, expect a good likelihood of rain or showers basically from Barrow east to the Canadian border. Behind this, showery type conditions or rain can be expected over the western Arctic coast. More of a chance of that than likely though. Down through the Bering Strait, there's a chance you're going to see some shower activity and also some foggy conditions in the St. Lawrence Island area in the morning. Same thing for the Pribilof Islands, with that high pressure staying over the eastern Bering Sea. Low clouds, foggy conditions are likely to persist throughout the day in the Pribilof Islands. Cloudy conditions across the Alaska Peninsula as well as the Aleutian Islands. And our low pressure system south of the chain is actually kind of dropping to the south a little bit. So wind is going to be the primary impact of that system. Not much in the way of precipitation is expected. Taking a look at Saturday's forecast, basically we're losing any real low pressure in the Gulf. It's kind of a flat pressure gradient type situation. There's an outside chance, a slight chance that you're going to see some showers in southeast Alaska. Sunny conditions basically from Yakutat across Prince William Sound, the Copper River Basin to the Kenai Peninsula. Some sunny conditions also in the Bristol Bay area. Warm conditions, and we're also expecting that this is going to be more of a stable environment, so not even likely to see any showers or even the possibility of thunderstorms. Further to the north, the low pressure system and the supporting features aloft are going to keep the threat for showers basically across the north central and northwest interior, north central interior, as well as the eastern Brooks Range. In the Bering Sea, with the high pressure system persisting in that eastern Bering Sea, along the Bering Sea coast, especially in the overnight morning hours, foggy conditions from Kuskokwim Bay north up to the Norton Sound area, as well as in the St. Lawrence Island region. In the Aleutian Islands, basically a continuation of this easterly flow pattern across the Aleutian Islands, cloudy conditions, chance that you may see some showers out into the extreme western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look now at our temperatures around the state today. In southeast Alaska, it was cloudy and cool in the mid to upper 50s throughout the panhandle because of the extensive cloud cover. Along the North Gulf Coast and the south central region, and generally the low to mid 60s, upper 60s up into the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, low 60s. In the eastern interior, the Tanana Valley, temperatures generally in the low to mid 60s. A bit warmer over towards McGrath, they hit 70. Same thing over towards that Galena area. And then southwestern Alaska, you can see generally in the 60s. Moving our focus to the northern part of the state along the Brooks Range. South side of the Brooks Range, south slopes in the low to mid 60s, even some upper 60s, until you get over towards the eastern Brooks Range, a bit cooler there because of the persistent cloud cover, low 50s. Arctic coast, low 40s to the east, to the mid 50s to the west. Kotzebue Sound generally in the 50s, same thing with the Norton Sound area. St. Lawrence Island only into the mid 40s today. Taking a look at the Bering Sea coast, that Bethel area, in the mid 60s inland to the mid 50s along the coast. Same thing in the Bristol Bay area. Alaska Peninsula generally in the mid 50s to low 50s as we move on out towards the eastern Aleutian Islands and that Dutch Harbor area. Right around 50 in the Pribilof Islands, then across the remainder of the Aleutian Islands in the low to mid 50s with the upper 40s out towards Shemya. Taking a look at our low temperature forecast for tonight. Southeast Alaska, you're not going to see much of a temperature change. And only within the 50s today for your highs, mid to upper 50s, low to mid 50s for your lows, although Yakutat's probably going to drop down to 49. Along the North Gulf Coast and the South Central region, basically upper 40s to low 50s throughout the entire region. Same thing as we move on into the interior, into the Tanana Valley, across much of the western and central to western interior, low 50s, some upper 40s. And then as we move on over towards Norton Sound and that Bering Sea coastal areas, mid 40s are what you can expect there. Upper 40s to low 50s in the Alaska Peninsula, mid 40s to upper 40s across the Aleutian Islands. Up along the Arctic coast, temperatures are going to stay above freezing, but they are going to be dropping into the mid 30s. So it's going to be cooling down, particularly from Barrow to the east, low 40s to mid 40s over the western Arctic coast. Taking a look at the forecast high temperatures for tomorrow, southeast Alaska, not much difference than what you saw today. Generally speaking, in the upper mid to upper 50s, although up into the Haines, Skagway area, you may actually see low 60s there. Much warmer conditions over the south central region than what we saw today. Upper 60s to low 70s across the region, to the mid to upper 70s up into the Susitna Valley. 70s in the Copper River Basin. Along the Alaska Range, on the north side of the Alaska Range, upper 60s, but then in the eastern interior, temperatures generally in the low 70s to mid 70s as we move on into the central interior. Basically upper 60s to low 70s across the central to western interior with 70-degree readings expected down in Bristol Bay. 70s inland of the Kuskokwim Delta with mid 50s along the coast. Mid 50s over the Seward Peninsula region. 40s and 50s north of the Brooks Range. The Alaska Peninsula, expect your temperatures generally to be in the mid 50s. Might see one or two places get to near 60. And along the Aleutian Islands, not a real big change. Low 50s to mid 50s are what you can expect there. Taking a look now at our flying weather for tomorrow. Some marginal to IFR conditions in southeast Alaska because of the wet conditions that we're expecting there tomorrow. Up along the Arctic coast, basically from the Prudhoe Bay area west, marginal to IFR conditions there. Same thing over towards the Kotzebue Sound region, marginal conditions over in the Norton Sound region. Generally speaking, under that high pressure system in the Bering Sea, especially over the Pribilof Islands, IFR conditions there, marginal conditions basically from the eastern Aleutian Islands west along the Aleutian Islands with some IFR conditions on the south side of the Aleutian, central to western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look now at our passes for tomorrow, Anik-Tuvik Pass, expect VFR conditions. VFR conditions for Adigan Pass. Down to the Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, expect VFR conditions. VFR conditions for Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass. Might even see an isolated thunderstorm up towards Windy Pass. Isabel Pass, VFR conditions, but again, the threat of a late afternoon, evening thunderstorm is possible. Same thing for Mentasta Pass. Down to Tonita Pass, same thing. VFR conditions, but late afternoon, evening potential for a thunderstorm. And then down to Portage Pass, VFR conditions, and over towards southeast Alaska and Chilkoot and White Pass, marginal to IFR conditions are what you can expect for the majority of the day tomorrow there. Taking a look at our freezing levels, generally speaking, about 8 to 10, well, generally 8,000 feet over much of the mainland to about 10,000 feet in the southern panhandle, 8,000 feet over the Alaska Peninsula to 10,000 feet over the central Aleutian Islands, and kind of sloping on up to about 12,000 feet over the extreme western Aleutian Islands. Taking a look now at our icing for tomorrow. Expect some isolated moderate icing from your freezing level to about 14,000 feet, basically where that trough was from Barrow down across that northwest Arctic coast to the Seward Peninsula and the St. Lawrence Island area. Also, there's a potential for some isolated moderate icing over the central Aleutian Islands from your freezing level to about 14,000 feet as well. Taking a look at our jet stream for tomorrow, it's a pretty weak jet stream. It's coming across basically west of the Kamchatka Peninsula. Very weak, 65-knot jet coming down through northwest Alaska, through the western Alaska at 55 knots, down to 50 knots south of the Aleutian Islands, 60 knots south of the Gulf, and about 55 knots coming onshore near Haida Gwaii. Taking a look now at the 9,000 foot level, generally a pretty light weather regime over the mainland. 15 knot winds in the southern panhandle to 25 knots towards Dixon Entrance. The stronger winds should be over that north of the Brooks Range, the Arctic coast, about 25 to 35 knot winds there. Light winds underneath our high pressure in the Bering Sea, and about 25 to 30 knot winds right around that low pressure system south of the Aleutian Islands. Down to the 3,000 foot level, light and variable winds in southeast Alaska and much of the southern mainland. Basically, the strongest winds are from the Brooks Range north at about 25 to 30 knots there, 25 knots in that Bering Strait. Light winds around our high pressure system in the Bering Sea around 15 knots or so, although 20 knots up towards the St. Lawrence Island area. Light winds across the Alaska Peninsula, but winds pick up a little bit with that low pressure system south of the Aleutian Island at about 25 to 30 knots there. Taking a look at our turbulence for tomorrow, some isolated moderate turbulence below 2,000 feet up over the western Brooks Range in the Kotzebue Sound area, and then also out over the central Aleutian Islands. And that wraps up this portion of the show. Enjoy the segment and come back for the marine forecast.
Plan now for the Percy meteor shower. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Plot Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We've got good news and some even better news. The good news is that the Perseid meteor shower, traditionally the best meteor shower of the year, will peak Wednesday night, August 12th through Thursday morning, the 13th.
But the even better news is that the waning crescent moon won't rise until just before sunrise, which will give us nice dark skies for watching the Perseids this year.
And the reason we're giving you 2 weeks warning is because we want you to have plenty of time to plan ahead. Let's show you how to watch.
Simply go outside Wednesday night, August 12th after midnight through dawn Thursday morning and look straight up. To see the most meteors, here's rule number 1.
Hope it's clear out, because if it's cloudy or raining, you won't see any meteors at all.
Rule number 2, get as far away from city lights as possible, because even though you may see a handful of the brightest meteors from city locations, the city lights, like moonlight, flood the sky with so much sky glow that nowadays many of the meteors in a meteor shower are hidden from view.
Rule number 3, observe while lying on the ground on a blanket or in a lawn chair. In other words, keep looking up. No telescopes, no binoculars.
Rule number 4, stay outside for at least a couple of hours, preferably after midnight, and have plenty of patience.
If you follow these rules, you can expect to see several meteors per hour and maybe many more. Simply lie back and constantly scan the sky, and usually when you least expect it, a meteor or even 2 will zip across the sky.
Now, although some astronomy magazines will tell you that you may see 60 meteors per hour, which would boil down to about 1 a minute, meteors really don't operate on a time schedule. You may see 10 of them in 2 minutes and then have to wait 20 minutes to see another one. But that's the fun of it, because each meteor is a total surprise.
Okay, we've got our skies set up for Wednesday night to Thursday morning, August 12th to the 13th, around 3:30 a.m. Facing northeast, and although it's summertime, don't be surprised to see some of winter's brightest stars.
Close to the horizon is Orion the Hunter, Taurus the Bull, and the Gemini Twins. And up to your left, the dimmer stars of the mythical hero Perseus, for whom this meteor shower is named.
Wonder why they're called the Perseids? Well, meteor showers are named for the constellation from where the meteors appear to radiate. But what exactly is a meteor? Let's take you out into space and explain.
Meteors are the flashes of light we see when tiny specks of space debris slam into our Earth's atmosphere and light up. You see, every time a comet visits our sun, it sheds tons of debris in its path. And eventually, this debris gets spread out along the comet's path.
Now, if our Earth plows into this path of comet debris, these tiny pieces of comet litter will slam into our Earth's atmosphere, traveling many miles per second. The particles themselves are far too small to be seen, but the friction of these particles hitting the air causes the air surrounding them to heat up and make a visible streak of light.
And we call these streaks of light meteors, or incorrectly, falling stars. The meteors we see during the Perseid meteor shower each August are debris from a comet named Swift-Tuttle.
And our Earth plows through its debris field about the same time every August. The Perseid shower is one of the oldest recorded meteor showers in history and has been seen every August for over 2,000 years. Now, let me remind you of the single most important rule for observing a meteor shower, which is you must constantly scan the sky and have patience. You may see no meteors for 20 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 may flash by all at once.
But each time you see a Perseid streak across the sky, remind yourself that what you're actually seeing is a tiny piece of comet litter plunging to its fiery death. Head for the shower. Keep looking up.
Welcome back, and we'll start by taking a look at our ice edge. And basically what the ice edge has been doing is, with these storms that have been coming through, it's been moving a little bit to the north and a little bit to the south. Once the storm goes through, south winds in advance of the storm, north winds coming behind it. But it hasn't been moving very much, and it's basically the ice is kind of thinning out and melting in place over the Arctic Ocean here. And then with that said, we'll take a look now at our Southeast Alaska marine forecast for Friday. Expect southwest winds about 15 to 20 knots in the southern inside waters, and north winds 20 knots as you get up on towards Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay. In the southern outside waters, west winds 15 knots, 20 knots as we get off the coast of Sitka towards Gustavus, with 15-knot winds along that east Gulf Coast, all out of the west. By Saturday, in the southern inside waters, expect the winds to be out of the north-northwest about 15 to 20 knots, with north winds 20 knots coming down through Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay. And in the outer coastal waters, basically expect the winds to remain west, 15 knots across the entire region. Moving on over to the south central region, taking a look at the North Gulf Coast, southwest to west winds, 15 to 20 knots there, light and variable winds in Prince William Sound. Around Kodiak Island, basically southwest to west winds as well, about 15 knots on up into the Barren Island region. In Cook Inlet, variable winds to 10 knots, so pretty light wind conditions except for just outside of the Resurrection Bay area for tomorrow. By Saturday, expect much lighter conditions off of the just off of Resurrection Bay there and along the North Gulf Coast. Variable winds 10 knots there. Variable winds 10 knots south of Prince William Sound as well as in Prince William Sound. Variable winds 10 knots in the Cook Inlet region, with west to northwest winds 15 knots from Augustine down through the Barren Islands, and also west winds over the Kodiak Island waters and Chillicothe Strait as well as south of the island at 15 knots. For the Alaska Peninsula for Friday, expect your winds to be light and variable south of the eastern Alaska Peninsula, with northeast winds about 10 knots, so pretty much light and variable there as well south of the western Alaska Peninsula. Northwest winds 15 knots in that Bristol Bay area, with northeast winds 15 knots north of the Alaska Peninsula itself. By Saturday, well, let's see, I forgot to change my label on this, my apologies. Light and variable winds throughout much of the Alaska Peninsula waters on Saturday, with winds out of the northwest still at 15 knots in Bristol Bay. For the Aleutian Islands on Friday, winds are expected to be out of the northeast to east, 15 to 20 knots, lighter over the Unalaska area, increasing to 20 knots from Nikolsky west towards Adak, then 25 knots as we move west of Adak, as well as over towards the Chemie area. But by the time we get out towards Chemie, expect the winds to drop to about 20 knots. Taking a look at that forecast for Saturday, Northeast winds increasing about 20 to 25 knots over the eastern Aleutian Islands, 20 to 25 knots to just west of Nikolsky, and 20 to 25 knots over the Atka to Adak region, remaining at 25 knots just west of Adak, and increasing to 25 knots out of the southeast over the extreme western Aleutian Islands out towards Shemya. For our Bering Sea coastal waters, for Friday, light and variable winds in the Pribilof Islands, as you would expect with that high pressure system over the eastern Bering Sea. West to northwest winds in the Nunivak Island region at about 15 knots, and southwest winds 20 to 25 knots from St. Matthew Island up to the St. Lawrence Island region. Taking a look at the area for Saturday, light and variable winds over the Pribilof Islands. Southwest to south winds 20 to 25 knots from St. Matthew Island up to St. Lawrence Island, with winds out of the west-northwest remaining 15 knots in the Nunivak Island region. For our Arctic coastal waters outside of Kotzebue Sound, southwest winds 25 knots, 30 knots out of the southwest off Cape Lisburne. Point Lay, same thing. By Barrow, west winds 20 knots, 20-knot winds by Prudhoe Bay, with winds out of the south at about 20 knots out towards the Canadian border there at the eastern Arctic coast. And for Saturday, expect your winds to be out of the southwest 25 knots outside of Kotzebue Sound, dropping off to 20 knots out of the south off of Cape Lisburne. Variable to east winds, it's kind of a confused situation here over Wainwright to Point Lay, around 15 knots. Northwest winds 20 knots in the waters off of Barrow, with west winds 25 knots over the eastern Arctic coastal waters. And for a very quick recap, basically expect rainy conditions in southeast Alaska, some thunderstorm activity in the evening hours over the eastern interior down into the south central region, foggy conditions in the Pribilof Islands, and then up along the Arctic coast we have that system moving in with the potential for rain over the western Arctic coast. But we're about out of time for the show this evening. Thank you for watching and have a good evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.